Okay, it is 5 after. Robert, I don't really know a lot about you. I think we'll know more about you at the end of this talk. I just know that he builds houses, and he lives in the greater Lansing area. I think you live in Hazlitt or someplace thereabouts. And Jim Ellickson, bless his heart, got in touch with Robert and with us to suggest this episode of for us at our meeting this month, because the article about the 99th Battalion, there it is, Jim is holding it up. Oh, so is Robert. Yes, the secret missions. Robert's father was in that unit, and he's going to tell us about what was unusual about his father's service in that unit, and tell us about other memories he has. And Robert, anytime that you want me to put that PowerPoint up, all those pictures and things, I'll just show people the very first one so they know for sure that they're in the right place. There he is. There's our announcement. So you all saw that picture, and I got that from some of Robert's materials. But for now, I'll turn that off and we'll just listen to Robert speaking. If you want just his face showing, remember that you go to view and on speaker. If you want to see all of us beautiful people, then check gallery. So, Robert, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I am absolutely delighted to have this chance to talk to you about my dad. I don't think I've ever seen so many Norwegians in one place before, and this is delightful. You can tell from my surname that I was not born Norwegian. I had never seen this magazine until Jim Ellickson called a while back, and he said, "Hey, wasn't your father in the 99th?" And that because he saw the article inside, which talks about the 99th. Well, I've known Jim for well over 50 years already, and I just don't see him anymore since they moved to Traverse City, but he's a delight. If you don't already know that, you need to know that. Jim's a delight. So he says to me, "Your dad was in the 99th, wasn't he?" I said, "Yeah, you remember that," because I enjoy culture and ethnic stuff. And I'm sure once I found out Jim was Norwegian, I must have said, "Hey, my dad was in the 99th," and bored him to tears with stories about my dad and the 99th. And he remembered that. So that's why he called me. He said, "Would you be willing to talk about your dad in the 99th in front of our organization, our group?" I said, "I'm not a speaker, but yeah, I'll do that." So he said, "I'll have somebody call you and we'll set it up." So he had Judy call me, and she and I have had several phone conversations about what we do, how we set it up, what I talk about, and what have you. So in any event, I'm just delighted. I love to talk about my dad and the 99th. I lost my dad in 1995. He was 83 years old at the time. I was born in 42 in December, and I think my dad was drafted about 2 months later in first couple of months of 43. So this winter I'll be 79, so you know how old this story is. Goes back a ways. He was drafted and ordered to Camp Wheeler in Macon, Georgia. Now, I'm sure he never knew this, and I didn't until a week or so ago when I decided to go online and see what I could learn about Camp Wheeler. Well, Wheeler was a camp where they trained troops for World War I. At the end of the war, they shut it down. And then they reopened it in 1940, and they opened it up as a facility to train replacements. So whereas the 99th was organized at Camp Ripley, and they went to Camp Hale in Colorado, they were trained and they traveled together as a unit. But that was not the case at Camp Wheeler. So my dad was at Camp Wheeler for boot camp. And the story I like is he says that when they were done with training, they must have all been out on the parade ground and they're passing out orders. Smith, you go here, Jones, you go here, and so on. Well, my dad says, I'm the last one standing. Everybody else has got their orders and I'm the last one standing there. He gets these orders and he says, you're going to England and you're going to join the 99th Infantry Battalion separate. And he says, what is that? He has no idea. And they ship him off to Baltimore, and he gets on what I think, I'm not sure of this, but I think it was the Queen Mary. Queen Mary was converted into a troop ship. So he got sent to England, and he shows up at Abergavenny, and I think that's Wales. And he reports in to the duty officer, and he tells him, go load up the stoves and get the fires going. Must have been potbelly stoves in the barracks. He says, the company's out on 20-mile hike and they'll be back. And then when they get back, if the furnaces are all going, it'll be nice and warm. So that's his first exposure to the 99th. And then he realizes these guys have all got names he's never heard before. Svensson, Hansen, Johansson, Olsen, Scottam, Bjerke. We grew up in the Ohio Valley, and my ancestors are all from Eastern Europe. So, you know, we got all the people from Russia, Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, Croatia, all the Eastern European countries. Whereas your people came over and, for the most part, I believe, became farmers in the Midwest. My people came over and became either coal miners or steel workers in the Ohio Valley. My mother's family is out of Western Pennsylvania. My dad was born and raised in Bel Air, Ohio. So this is a whole nother world, absolutely a whole different world for him. And he had never gotten past the 7th grade. His dad died when he was 8 years old. He got a stepfather who was, from all reports, he was abusive. But his mother could speak about 6 words in English. She had 3 little kids, so there's a marriage of necessity there. And my dad lasted in the house till he was 14. When he was 14, he went to work in a steel mill. And he brought money home to take care of his mother and his 2 little sisters. And that was the extent of his common experience with any kind of groups. It was just his own family. So whereas today we think in terms of Kiwanis or Rotary or your Norwegian group or church groups, high school friends, he had none of that. So when he got to England and joined the 99th, this really became a family for him that he'd never seen. And he quickly became friends with a lot of the guys in that outfit. Really, you talk about a band of brothers, that's what it was. That's what it became for him. The previous history of the 99th was well before my dad was a part of it. They were in Norway, and many of you, I'm sure, know this story, but they were in they were in Norway dealing with the Germans, and they were doing a lot of sabotage work trying to disrupt or destroy this heavy water facility that the Germans had built in Norway, which was used for, they're going to be used for atomic explosives. So the 99th was up there trying to do what they could to destroy all this. And then there's also the argument, and you see this in that magazine article too, they think that they might have been up there also as a decoy. There were 350,000 Germans up there, and if they could use the Norwegian outfit to keep the Nazis busy, they couldn't send them down for the planned invasion. So I don't know when the outfit got transferred to England, but when they got organized to join the invasion at Normandy, there's only that one comment in that magazine that I'm not sure about. It says that they went in on June 21st. Well, my dad always said they went in on D+13. So 13 on top of June 6th would have been June 19th. So I'm not sure which is the correct answer there. Your magazine article says the 21st. Dad always said D+13. So anyway, that's when he sat out in the landing craft, and my dad and I have a great talent for motion sickness. So I'm sure he was sick the whole time he was sitting out in that landing craft, waiting to go ashore. They went ashore and turned right and headed for Cherbourg. Cherbourg was a major port that the Allies were trying to reestablish control of, because that's where they were going to get a lot of supplies in. So that's what the 99th did. Initially, they went to Cherbourg. They relieved the town of the Germans. They took over the city, and then they started back toward the middle part of France. I don't have very many, if any, stories about the battles. My dad would not talk about any of that. And I gather that's true for a lot of the guys. Most of what I know is personal stuff. He talked about the hedgerows. The hedgerows were really scary, I guess, because these were tall bushes that were planted in squares around the fields in France. And it was a great place for the Germans to hide, or if you stuck your neck past one of the openings into those fields, you were in trouble. They were really scared of those hedgerows, and they spent quite a bit of time there. They from there, again, that article mentions it, but they were in Elbeuf. That was their first major battle of the war for them, for the 99th. They went into Aachen, and I don't know how it's lasted, but I've got a beer glass that my dad brought home from Aachen. It's not cracked, it's not chipped, nothing. How it made it all the way from Aachen to my dad's and mother's home, and now I have it, I have no idea. Also, as far as things he brought back a small Mauser pistol. He brought a Luger. I've got the Mauser. My brother has the Luger. And there's a set of field glasses that I've got here on the end table, and I use for watching the birds when they're feeding at my feeders. So, that's little stuff that is personal, but has nothing to do with the battles. One thing he says, I never got a scratch the whole time I was in Europe. Not a scratch. That's amazing in its own right. He was big enough guy, they gave him the opportunity to carry the bazooka, which is a heavy piece of artillery to carry on your shoulder. And the only time he said anything that had anything to do with the war, he says he did put a round into the tracks on a German tank and made it go boom. So I don't know how long he had to carry that thing. But the other thing he said that really impressed me in a way that I don't fully understand, but I do in another sense, because I know my dad. He says, I never actively aimed my rifle at any individual. He says, fired the rifle just like he was ordered to, Says, but I never aimed it at anybody. That sounds like my dad. There was a place they went across France, and they came across this group of refugees that are just wandering. They don't know where they're going. They don't know where they came from or whatever. And for Hansen was the colonel. Colonel Hansen was the head of the outfit. When they came on to these guys, they couldn't speak to them. They didn't understand them. So Hansen says, go get Stepanovich. Maybe he can talk to him. You know, if anybody who's not from Western Europe is Polish in their minds. So they go get my dad and bring him up, and he starts talking to these people in Serbian, and they are Serbian. They are absolutely amazed. Here's an American soldier who speaks Serbian. That blew their minds. And I don't know what became of him, but that's the gist of the story there as to how he got involved with them. There's a great book. It's paperback. It's available. It's The Forgotten 500. Now that has nothing to do directly with the 99th, but it has to do with the Serbs. The Allies were flying bombing missions over Romania to the Ploesti oil fields, which is what the Germans were using for their source for their oil to convert into gasoline and lubricants and so on. And a lot of those planes were getting shot down. And the pilots, most of whom were English, were being picked up by the Serbs and hidden in the mountains. They'd hide them there to keep them away from the Germans because the Germans had overrun all of the Balkans. So it was a cat and mouse game looking after those guys. And they finally got a lot of them out. They flew, I don't know how they did it, but it's an interesting book that I read, paperback, The Forgotten 500. Well worth it if you have any interest in World War II history. There's a comment in that magazine also about the salt mines where they had the gold and the artwork stashed away, where the Germans had stashed all this stuff away. Well, the 99th became part of the retrieving of this. And my dad was part of that. He said he rode on the top of a truck full of gold. I says, and you didn't bring any home? Yeah, I guess it was an incredible amount of gold and artwork that the Germans had stashed away in these salt mines. They ended up at, well, also, it was a 1,000-man unit, and it was a separate, if you look at the description, it has separate written in parentheses. They were not attached to any other unit. So it was the 99th Infantry Battalion separate. So what happened was anytime the Allies were having trouble on the front lines, they'd pull this outfit up. They'd pull them up as reinforcements. So I gather they saw some pretty ugly battle. But again, I don't know any of the stories because he never talked about any of it. They ended up in the Bulge. They were in the Bulge. My dad said it was so cold that winter. I've never been that cold in my life. That was the winter of '44 when they say that Europe was in an incredible deep freeze. He says, I didn't have my shoes and socks off for 31 days that they were in the Bulge. He came home in 1950. He built an all brick ranch house and he put a double furnace in it. He wasn't ever going to be cold again. They went to Norway after the war was over, after the peace was declared. And again, with all these Norwegian guys in that outfit, that became vacation. Just like Jim took his son and they went to Norway to visit a number of years ago. These guys went and visited with family. With a lot of them were first generation themselves, and they went back and visited with family members. I guess they had a great time. They were there, I don't know, a couple of months at least. There was a parade that brought the king, Haakon, back to Norway, and the 99th was tasked with being the honor guard. So that was something that they got out of it. My dad was a Jeep driver for Colonel Hanson. I don't know why he got picked as a Jeep driver for the colonel, but anytime he wanted to go someplace, my dad would take him in a Jeep. And he says one night he went to I don't know, a bar or whatever, took the colonel. He's standing outside by the Jeep because that's where he's supposed to be. And Sonia Heine comes out of the bar, and she's drunk as a skunk, and she flips a salute up to him, and she says, "Hello, soldier." And it's just the personal stuff you remember. Has nothing to do with the war. And from that point, they were sent home. They were sent to Miles Standish, Camp Miles Standish in the Boston area. And I think that's where they were demobilized. And my dad was, I guess, I don't know, they must have given him tickets or whatever, but he was on a train. And that train was going from Boston to Steubenville, Ohio, which is across the river from where he lived. And he said the wheels on the train would go across the joints in the rails, and it'd make that sound clickety-clack, clickety-clack. He said all the soldiers were always saying to themselves, "Going home, going home, going home." That was probably the most important thing for them at the time. They were going home. So my mother picked him up in Steubenville. That was the end. Those guys never got any big welcome home, no big parades, no nothing. He went back into the mill, worked in the steel mill until he was 62. He did go, he went to the one reunion, I think it was in Fargo. I'm not sure of that. It was 1955. He went to the reunion. And he flew, probably from Pittsburgh to wherever, Fargo. And it was the first time he'd flown. And what was he then? He was 43 years old then. And there, I don't have it. I don't know where it is. I've got a picture that somebody took of him sitting around talking to his buddies at the reunion. And I've never seen a smile on his face like that one. That was beautiful. He went again to a reunion in Colorado in '85. He and my mother drove out. And so he'd been to 2 reunions with the outfit and enjoyed the daylights out of them. He had a couple of the guys that visited him in our home in West Virginia. A Sergeant Magnuson came to visit, and he spent several days there. And Bjerke, Herbert Bjerke, is the one name that he was probably one of my dad's best buddies in the service. He visited with his family sometime in the late 50s. In fact, just getting ready for this, I looked up Bjerke on the internet. He died 2017. He was 100 years old. He's probably one of the oldest guys in the outfit that lived that long. My dad had become a member of the VFW, but that was it. He paid his dues. He never did anything with the VFW. You know, back in the late 40s, early 50s, we had a lot of parades on the 4th of July. My dad was never a part of any of that. I think he just wanted to forget most of what that was all about. Except for the friends he made in the Army, that he loved dearly, but he didn't want anything to do with the Army. In fact, when I was old enough, we still had the draft. And all he ever said to me was, stay the hell out of the Army. So I did, because I didn't want to come home in a body bag from Vietnam. I went to OCS and joined the Navy. That was a whole better ride. That's really all I can tell you. As I say, I don't know anything about any of the battles or anything. I just know the personal stuff. And I miss my dad.
Well, that's some interesting material that you covered, and we probably enjoyed that more than hearing about the battles themselves anyway. I'm going to start the PowerPoint, and you can tell us what's in each of the slides. So, well, we know what that is. That was the announcement for your talk.
Yeah, I don't know where that was. I didn't think he was a Jeep driver until they got to Norway. And my dad always looked good when he was dressed up. So I think that may have been part of the reason that they made him a Jeep driver for the colonel. But that may well have been in Germany for all I know in that picture, though, on the Jeep. This is probably taken, they take all the pictures of the guys when they finish boot camp. So I think that's probably when that was taken. I'd never seen this until Judy found it for me. It's my dad's registration for the draft. He was born in Blair, Ohio, born 1912. He was 31 years old when he was drafted. And he was 32 when they went across France after the invasion. It made him one of the old men with all the 18, 19-year-old boys. There's an interesting story, I think, that picture of my dad smiling tells. I'm sure he had never seen a dentist in his life. And he had cavities. Well, 31 years old, the Army pulled all of his teeth out. I think they figured, he's going to get killed anyway. Why should we spend a lot of money on dental work? So from age 31 on, he had false teeth. And I think is compliments of the U.S. Army. This is a board. I had a lady friend of mine put this collage together. I gave it to him on his 80th birthday. The blue picture of the rifle up in the top left corner, that's a marksman's insignia. If the guy was really good with the rifle, he got one of those to wear on his outfit. It's a Kentucky long rifle in that picture. That's what they still use that today.
That's actually the expert infantryman badge.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's for being a good marksman.
Well, the Maltese cross below is the marksman badge.
Oh, see, you know more than I do. I thought that was a German.
I was in the Army.
Oh, well, okay. I wasn't.
Who's talking?
Kurt.
Kurt Osborne?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Oops.
There's your.
My apologies here. I touched the wrong thing on my computer and it went crazy.
We forgive you. The chain.
Actually, that badge is the combat infantry badge, and that's given to people who participate in combat.
Well, he clearly was in combat. I know that.
Yes, yes. It's called the combat infantry badge.
Okay. Those little, this is a mixture of stuff, both, or I should say, from the Army, from church, from his work in the mill. Judy started to show you those two shoulder patches down there at the bottom. Those are your 99th. Yeah, these were shoulder patches. That was something else I found interesting. I've got his Eisenhower jacket that he wore when they were in Normandy. I'm sorry, in Norway. There is no insignia of any kind on that jacket. I wonder if that was an Army policy, was to take all your insignia off. But you know, I have no other explanation for it. That's his discharge. It's a little version of it that's in a, what do you call it, plastic seal. There's his dog tag. Here's some of his service ribbons. The chain, I understood, was used to clean the gun barrel. Is that true?
Hmm.
If it is, when I was in the Army, we didn't use it to clean our rifle.
Okay.
But there's other weapons besides the rifle, and I had both the M1, the M14, the M16.
Oh, you're way newer than he was. They had only the M1.
Yes.
Yeah, and here's the dog tag over here.
Yeah, dog tag.
Yeah. Okay.
Does everyone know why there's a chip on the left end?
A chip, oh, right here?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know either.
When a soldier was killed or died, they would clip the dog tag to his teeth.
Oh. Oh. Mm.
That's,
In my day, you were issued two,
yes.
one on a smaller chain that they would put on your toe.
Mhm.
Interesting.
But in World War II, they would clip it to your teeth.
There's a story on the dog tag too, which I would mention only so that you know the story. When he was in boot camp yet, he had a dog tag that had a P on it for Protestant. And he said, I'm not Protestant. I'm an Eastern Orthodox. And when they did inspections, he wouldn't wear his dog tag. He had it in his pocket. And the inspecting officer tried to give him a bunch of you-know-what. And he said, I'm sorry, I'm not a Protestant. Well, that's been changed now since World War II. But he said, I'll wear my dog tags in combat, but I'm not wearing them now.
Interesting. Whoops. Well, I don't know why this isn't moving, but okay, now I'll be able to go to the next one. Oh yeah, we saw
Maybe.
this one.
These two little things, I think, are just his, they get every 5 years in the steel mill, they got a lapel pin with a number on it, what year it was and so on. He went up through 45 years. He was actually in the mill for 49. This is just, this pink card, I think is just, I think that was issued at the reunion. So I know the one with the blue trailer on it, he just got it to reunion. The silver dollar down here is worn off. That was just him personally. He carried that silver dollar for God knows how many years in his pocket with his loose change, and that managed to wear that silver off. So you can't even tell what's on the face of that now. And there's these two wedding rings down below. Over here in the right corner, that's an image of St. George. That's patron saint of his for his name. He was George Robert. I'm Robert George. And that's just That's family stuff.
The little medallion or little lapel pin upon onto the left of the pink,
Yeah.
the bottom one, that's the VFW.
That's VFW, yeah.
That's a Maltese cross.
Yep. It's just stuff I could find. He didn't have that much. Oh, this picture of the horse. My dad loved horses, absolutely loved horses, but he never had any because he lived in the city. But he found this horse. I don't know whether that's Germany or Norway. Judy thinks it's Norway because of the steep roofs. But he says you couldn't talk to that horse because he didn't understand English. Yeah, that's the picture I really like.
Now people can probably see those steep roofs a little better,
Yeah.
which certainly looks like Norwegian ones. They could be German as well, I guess.
And I'm just noticing, he had the patches on his uniforms. So I don't know why the one, I've got his jacket. I've got that Eisenhower jacket in my house. It's got nothing on it. So I don't know when they did or didn't wear their insignia.
You suppose he used it for ordinary wear after the war?
No,
Okay.
no, I'm sure of that. He did not like anything about the Army itself. That's why he said to me, stay the hell out of the Army. More than once.
The end.
The end.
Questions?
I've got a question or two. What, do you know what the significance of that silver dollar was?
No, I think he just carried it for good luck.
Okay, and also, do you know if he got one of the 99th Battalion rings?
No, I've never seen that.
Well,
Okay.
you can get them on eBay if you're interested. So
Really?
they pop up on eBay every once in a while, and they're real attractive.
Huh.
They've got the same Viking ship that's on that patch,
Yeah.
the white patch that you have.
Well, I'm glad to know that. I'm gonna look.
I don't know anything about the history of the Queen Mary, but there's a Queen Mary ship that is in Long Beach in the naval, with the Navy ships there. And
Isn't that the QE2? Queen Elizabeth?
oh, I thought it was the Queen Mary, but I could be wrong.
No.
It's the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California.
It is.
Okay. It's
Okay.
for ceremonial things anyway. I'm sure it doesn't go out into the
No.
maneuvers or anything.
And Mr. Aleckson, thank you.
And I had, I wanted to comment that was an interesting story about Sonia Hannay. Now we have a more realistic, well, I think we all knew that that she might have had some flaws anyway.
Or at least she enjoyed that evening, I guess.
She must have. Other questions? By the way, people will have to unmute yourself to talk. I mute everybody so that we can hear the speaker and we aren't bothered by phones ringing or dogs barking, etc. So if you have a question, by all means, just unmute yourself. Raise your hand maybe first so that I know that you're going to do that. Otherwise, I would really like to thank our speaker. I very much enjoyed this, and he was afraid that he wouldn't have 20 minutes worth of material, but I see that it's 2:45 now.
Oh,
Perfect.
well, I've never been a speaker, so this was a long shot.
Oh, well, you did a great job. And his reward for doing this is that he gets one or two copies of, oh, now I forgot the title of it, but the Gerd Nyquist book about the 99th Battalion. I've got the
Right.
paperback here, and a hardback is coming later this month, so he'll get one or both of those as his reward.
That is great. Thank you.
I didn't tell him yet, but his dad's name is in it
Oh my
Really?
goodness. Wow.
as one of the respondents to the questionnaire that the author sent out.
Well, that's cool.
I didn't
Well,
know that.
Thanks for doing this, Bob. And
Thanks, Jim.
it's not true that you're not a speaker. You talk all the time.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
When you talked about that Bjerke guy, how do you spell his name, his last name?
Bjerke.
Thank you.
Bjerke.
Thanks.
That was his good buddy.
And I was going to add one more comment that you mentioned the Battle of the Bulge. One of my grade school teachers, her husband was in the war, and I'm sure that he was in the Battle of the Bulge, and he was Norwegian descent. He wasn't from Norway. But now I'm saying, oh, I think I have to look him up and see
Yeah.
where he was assigned. It's still not very likely that he was in the 99th, but it's certainly possible.
Send me a name when you get it. I'd be curious too.
Oh, sure, I can tell you what it was right now. Well, his last name anyway was Mortensen.
I've heard that one.
His first name was Welby Mortensen. So I'll look it up. If I find any information, I'll certainly let you know.
You know, one other thought is, I can't remember what year it was, but the 99th had another reunion in Zanesville, Ohio. That was about 15, 18 years ago. And my wife Kathy and I went.
Really?
And I met Lieutenant Scottham. That was his lieutenant. And that was delightful to meet these guys.
Right. Well, this fellow, my teacher's husband, wouldn't have been there. He died many years ago, but I know that he was in World War II.
I offered to drive my dad to the reunion in 95. I don't know where it was going to be, but he said no. He was pretty bad at that point with Parkinson's, and he didn't last much longer. So I would have taken him, but he didn't want to go.
Yeah, I can understand that.